Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
It is Life Planning 101 on this beautiful Monday morning. A nice little rain shower overnight. Angela Robinson joins us here this morning. And Angela, what a beautiful day. And we have a beautiful topic.
We do, right? And it's funny that a granddad would say that. I'm just saying, because, if you've listened to our show at all in the past, you know my dad's favorite line that all his children are dysfunctional. Of course, this includes me. But his grandchildren are perfect. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about, is saving up for those perfect grandkids today. And, I found a really neat thing that I did, back in 2008. So it's been 9 years ago.
Wow.
And I was looking back at this article that we wrote, and we hadn't done anything like this in 9 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is great information, and we need to be sharing this, because it talked about the value of compound interest, and that's something that we don't often talk about on the show. But if you think about it, if you had $100 and it was earning 3% compound interest, after the first year you'd have what? 103, right? Okay, so after the second year, what would you have?
Not 106.
That's correct. Good job, Terry Slavens. It is 106.09.
Right.
Okay. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot. However, if that 9 cents is earning money for you and you never had to earn it, you never had to put your time towards it, isn't that a beautiful thing?
Free money. Free money,
in a sense, right? Letting your dollars work for you. And that's what this is all about. So I pulled out, there's a cool little calculator, a couple cool little calculators you can get on. One's on the inflation calculator, and I'll talk about that here in a bit. But another was just like a little savings calculator, and anybody can do this if you don't know how to run a financial calculator. And, suppose you're born in 1952, okay? So I figure a lot of our listeners are around that age, give or take, 10 years, okay? So suppose you're born in 1952. That's not too far of a stretch, right?
No.
And your grandparents had scrimped and saved $10 a month during the first 18 years of your life. It's just a horrendous amount.
A year.
Yep, 100. That's not. I mean, back then that was a probably pretty good little chunk, but it's not horrendous, right? So suppose that an investment had earned an average of 8% a year since the time it started. Okay, you retire at age 65. Guess how much that measly little $2,160 that your grandparents saved over 18 years was worth?
I can't do that in my head.
You're not that good? $203,632.61.
That is powerful compound interest.
Isn't it? Isn't it? So, Albert Einstein was once asked this, okay? What was the most powerful force in the universe? His reply?
Compound interest?
Compound interest. Now you see why, right?
Exactly.
Isn't that amazing, though?
I always love it. I haven't seen this in a while, so I don't know what the numbers are, but if you would have invested in Walmart stock when it first came out and just left it alone, what you'd have today, and it's mind-boggling.
Yes, absolutely. Same principle, right? And just putting back that little bit of money. And so, you think about, what can I do for my grandkids that would be really powerful? And we're going to kind of get into some goal setting and some things, but the compound interest alone is powerful no matter how you swing the axe, right?
Exactly.
And I thought this would be fun. I was actually at a forum a few months ago, and there was a gentleman that got up in the front of the room, and he had everybody list out what was their first job, how much did they earn, and how much did they save from that first job. And, of course, the winner went to the youngest age who had saved the most.
Right.
And I thought, I need to carry that onto the show. So in this goes back to not only about your grandkids, but about the legacy that you're passing on to your grandkids, the value of about what you're about to think about. I mean, Terry, I saw a smile come across your face when you heard me ask those questions, right? Because you actually go back in your brain and you think about how proud you were of that first job?
The official first job that I had was I had an uncle that was a dairy farmer. And when I turned 16 and could drive, I worked on his farm.
Yes.
And I made $3 an hour.
There you go. So see, remembering that. And then how much did you save of that $3 an hour? Okay, well, you don't win. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a first job challenge the entire month of August. Okay. And we're offering, because we love ViaScan in Las Colinas, the heart scans and the full body scans. So we're going to offer a free heart scan.
Wow.
Yes, for our largest amount saved from the first job at the youngest age. So it has to be a combination of the two, okay? So go to our website, kennedy-financial.com, and there's a button you can click on, First Job Challenge, okay? And make sure that you do that and get on there and do it, because we're going to do this the entire month of August. I'll remind you through every show.
And be honest.
Yes, and be honest, because I want to read some of these off.
Right.
I think stories are great, and these are the stories that you need to pass on to your grandkids. They need to know about that. And the funny thing is that when you really start talking to people, most people, it was somebody in their family that gave them that first job, right? So we're not talking about child labor necessarily, but most of the time, like your uncle or someone had a job that you could get a hold of, and of course we didn't earn much money, right? But being able to pass on that value of what it meant and what it felt like the first time that you earned your own money.
And you actually have your own money. You're not going to dad and asking for $20. You're not. You open your first checking account. All that stuff. Yes,
exactly. So you just teed us up perfect for the rest of our show, Terry. When we come back, we're going to be talking about what? How do you make use of this compound interest? What do you do for your grandkids? How can you set all this in motion and also set that legacy in motion, the things that matter most to you and what was important to you while you were saving your first dollars?
We'll have more Life Planning 101 right after this on KTX KWBY. It is Life Planning 101, segment number 2 this morning, Precious Grandchildren.
Precious grandchildren. Saving up for those precious grandchildren.
Most of the time they're precious.
Yeah, right, exactly, until you're tired. They need to go home. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about, of course, we talked about our first job challenge. If you missed that, make sure you go back and listen to that. We're going to do that the entire month of August, giving away a free heart scan. But we also talked about the power of compound interest. So, the first question I usually get is investments. Okay, what do we need to do for our grandkids? Well, let's back the train up a minute, because intent is a big part of that. Your investments are just a tiny little piece. They're just the tool, right? So we've got to figure out what is it that you really want to do to help your grandchildren.
Right.
Okay. And for some people, it's higher education. That's the first stop, right? A windfall for retirement. A lot of people are worried about their grandkids not having anything with our country's debt and everything else, right? Taking care of their family if something happened to them early in life. If your family has had a lot of health problems, you may be concerned that, later in life they fall in that same path. And, we have a client that his dad died in his 40s and of a heart attack. And so, you go to get him life insurance. His life insurance isn't cheap because of his dad's health history, right? And so, one of the best gifts, and I think I've said this on the show before, that people can give is the gift of life insurance when children are young.
Right.
Because it's before they encounter any of the health problems that they might have. By the time they're 18, who knows what they've already developed. And I hate to say that, but there are a lot of children that have a lot of problems. Yes, exactly. They have Crohn's, or they have some of these autoimmune disorders, or diabetes, or there's so much, right? Cancer, exactly. So, it is a gift that we often forget about, but it's a very, very powerful one. In fact, it's the one that I chose. My mom and dad asked me what we wanted for Seeley, our son, and I said, we would really love for you guys to buy him some life insurance because he'll have that forever.
My grandfather, who was a country company's agent, which is Illinois' version of Farm Bureau, bought insurance policies on all of us grandkids. My parents continued the tradition whenever we started having kids.
Right.
And I've continued the tradition now.
Yes. Yes, it's
And
powerful. It's just so powerful. And people forget about that. So it is a great gift. Let's switch to another side, because sometimes we think about what their needs are in life, but what are their real needs in life, so to speak, of, kind of what we talked about earlier. What wisdom do you want to impart on your grandchildren? The difference between grandparents and parents is, in my opinion, is patience and wisdom. Parents are so busy shuffling kids from one place to another, and they rarely take the time to teach the little treasures of life.
Right.
And that's where a grandparent can come in and change that child's life forever, and that's powerful.
I'm the baby of the family, and we always said that my dad and my mom got to enjoy my grandkids more than they did my older siblings'
Right.
grandkids, because at that point they were still working and making, by the time mine came along, they were retired and
Yes.
and could spend much more time with them.
That's exactly right. You have more patience the second time around because you don't have as much going on, right? But what is that wisdom that you want to impart on them? And I think this is important to really get to the heart of, is it, a love for learning. A lot of people, I hear that all the time. I want my grandchildren to love learning the way I have loved learning. I want them to have that passion, and I don't see that with today's children at all. Learning a sense of pride and accomplishment in their own savings or a job well done. Just like when I said your face lit up, we were talking about that first job challenge. That's pride. That's a sense of accomplishment. That's a wonderful feeling to have, and we've all had it at one time or another. Yet if we give and give and give, do we ever get to take ownership of that feeling?
Right.
We don't.
No.
Teaching your children or your grandchildren that, and my dad has been excellent at that. He makes the grandkids work for everything. So I think, but it's wonderful.
Work ethic.
Yes, it is work ethic, and it's powerful, and then he'll teach them to save, and he talks to them about their compound interest and things like this. Learning to take care of the what ifs in life. Learning to have contingents. I think a lot of kids think that, and me included, you included, we still believe that it won't happen to me, right? But as you get older, you start to realize more and more stuff does just happen. Unfortunately, we had a death in the family just recently on my husband's side, and a gentleman died in his late 40s, and it wasn't supposed to happen a week before his daughter's marriage.
Wow.
And yes, and it just out of the blue. And so, those what ifs in life become real, and you start to value what's really, really important, and making sure that, the what ifs in life aren't just about the money, but it's also about time.
Right.
Cherishing family. How important is that? And learning to embrace each day, carpe diem, so to speak, right? What about learning to give back? This is big, especially as grandparents get older. I watch more and more people as they get older, they want to give back.
Right.
And they've said, I've spent too many years doing this for myself. I want to give back. And what about teaching your grandkids at an early age the power of that? Because you know what it feels like when you give.
Oh, yeah.
It's an amazing feeling, right?
Yes.
It's the best thing you can do. And I think Jesus designed us to be that way.
Right.
So, that's really, really important. Or is it all the above? And some people struggle with that. They struggle with the fact of, I want to do it all, or I don't know what direction to do. I don't know if my grandkids are going to go to college. I don't know if they're going to be successful and be well, or I think their parents have got it made and they're going to take care of everything. I don't know exactly what it is that I want to accomplish. And so I want to make sure that everything remains as flexible as it possibly can, right? And that can be a very important fact, especially when you have an infant that we're talking about, and not necessarily 11 or a 12-year-old that has a little bit more you'll have a little more sense of direction with, right? And, the fact is that you may not know at all what you want to do, and that's okay too. But going back to that compound interest, you have to remember the power of what those several years could mean if you put it off until you know that grandkid better, right? So doing something is better than
doing nothing.
Doing nothing at all. Exactly.
Right.
So when we come back, let's talk about individual investment chassis, or what kind of looks best in each scenario. I think you're going to find this really exciting.
All right. We'll be back with more Life Planning 101 right after this on KETX KWBY. Wow, the final segment already.
I know. It's just a fun topic.
It's a fun topic. See, we're not always talking about, negatives and
Yeah,
stuff
that's
like
right.
that.
Negatives. In fact, I've got a very powerful thing to start out with, and I actually came in the studio this morning. Where's the pen? I got to write this down because I was listening to WBAP when I rolled in here, and I
We'll
don't know.
forgive you for that.
I don't know if anybody was listening to the Hall of Fame inductions, and they got to hear LaDainian Tomlinson's speech, and I didn't. And I heard a recap of it this morning. I literally teared up in the car and got chill bumps, and it was incredible. It was incredible. And the virtue of his speech was he talked about his great-great-grandfather, that he was a slave. He did not have choices. And he said, we do. And he said, we need to choose to be all on the same team, America's team, and work together. And he chose to take his induction and try to pull the country together.
That is good stuff.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful?
Especially in this day and age of protest.
Oh, my gosh.
Taking
I know.
a knee during the national anthem,
I know.
etc.
Yeah, he kept talking about he wanted to be the country that others wanted to strive to be. And, and I thought, how powerful is that? And how proud are his parents and his grandparents and what they instilled in that young gentleman right there. Because that came from someone somewhere along the line. And maybe it was Coach, maybe it was somebody besides the parents and grandparents, but isn't that what we all want our kids to be standing up there saying and our grandkids to be standing up there saying?
Instead of protesting.
That's exactly right. So I thought, that's beautiful. That really is beautiful. And it fit perfect with what we're talking about today. And in fact, we have a Twitter poll out there at KFS Life Planning. Which is more important for you to leave behind? Is it values or is it your money? And so tweet us. Let us know. I think I'll know that we should get 100% on one side, right?
Sure.
But, yeah. But with that, let's get back to the investment side of this, because this is powerful. We talked about compound inflation, right? And the power of that. In fact, Albert Einstein saying it was the most powerful force in the universe, okay? So I also want you to consider, when you're thinking about where to put your money, the risk of inflation in time as well, because it works just the opposite as a power in the other direction. Okay, so in the first segment of the show, we talked about being 1952, and if your grandparents had invested $10 a month at 8% for the next 18 years, by the time you were 65, you'd have over $203,000 from just that $2,100, right? Okay, so let's go back to that date of 1952, and let's look at inflation. Okay, to buy something that cost $100 in 1952 would cost you $924.36 today.
Wow.
Yes. Okay, so that is the risk of inflation in time. The reason I bring this up, where do most people put money for grandkids?
Bank.
Savings bonds. You named it. Yes, savings bonds. What do they earn?
Not much.
Very, very little, okay? CDs, savings bonds, all of these safe investments, the things that appear to be safe. You have to be careful when you're looking at your children's time horizon, because it's very, very, very long, right? And just think about it. It just makes sense. If you have a guaranteed investment that pays you 2 to 3%, and inflation is 3 to 4%, what's happening?
You're not making a headway.
No,
you're going backwards.
You're going backwards,
Exactly.
right? And you have to be very cognizant of that. Most people make that misstep just because they don't know, and it seems to be the safest place to do things, right?
If inflation's 4% and you're earning 4%, you're breaking even.
You're breaking even. So it's very hard to get ahead. In fact, we did a show many, many years ago on CDs and how many years had a negative real return or a net real return, and you'd be astonished. There's very few years that CDs actually make a positive return, real return after inflation. So you have to be very cognizant of that. So what is the right chassis? What is it that you need to do? Okay, simple brokerage account, a herd of cattle. Okay, we are in Texas. A kitty Roth IRA, a 529 plan, life insurance, an annuity. What is it? Okay, you have this immense amount of choices out there, and it's really important to think about your options, because some of these are more flexible than others, but others have very unique advantages that the others don't, right? And those are, in my opinion, they're choices that you kind of have to weigh per the grandkid. Okay, now when you're talking about an infant, Obviously, we talked about life insurance and how powerful that is. Obviously, if you were to open a brokerage account, you can always move that money into something else at a later point in time when you figure out that that's where that child is headed, right? One of my favorite things to watch kids do, and we actually do this with my son, is he's got a kiddie Roth IRA. He works at the ranch, and he helps us pick up rocks and sticks out of the arena so that we can ride our horses and we don't get anything stone bruised, right? He helps us feed. He helps us water. He has little things that he does around the house, and he earns a tiny paycheck for that, okay? So out of that tiny paycheck, we're teaching him the value of giving back and then saving, and then we go and stick that in what's called a kiddie Roth IRA. Okay, so a Roth IRA goes in after tax.
Right.
Okay, it grows tax free. And there's little known facts about a Roth. Okay, first of all, after 5 years of a Roth IRA, you can pull the principal out at any age without any penalty.
Good to know.
Yes, it is. Okay, so after you've owned the IRA for 5 years, the principal's yours. Second thing is, you can pull the interest out for education, a home purchase, or retirement without penalty. Think about that. You just covered a lot of things.
Major life events.
Right. The grandparents probably want to be able to help their kids with. The key is that the kid has to be earning money to be able to put money into the Roth IRA. Okay. The other neat thing, though, is if you're a business owner, this is a wonderful tool because you can pay that kid up to $6,300 a year. That's the standard deduction on a tax return, right? And they aren't going to pay any taxes. And guess what you just got to do?
Write it off.
That's right. So it's a write-off for mom and dad, right? Or grandparents, right? So it's really powerful. And then if it comes directly from the parent and they're under the age of 18, they also don't pay any FICA or Medicare tax on that. So it's a very powerful little investment that you can use. Okay, a herd of cattle. I'm always of the opinion the more you can get the kid involved, the better. And I know this sounds crazy, but if you have if you're already a cattle person, talk to your kids about, okay, this is your herd, take care of them, you've got to do this, and then you teach them the value of saving money and putting some back and separating your eggs and not put them all in one basket. Those things are powerful. So you've got tons of options to be able to do, and really I want to circle back because the investment chassis obviously is important. But the biggest thing is that you go back to your goals of what you really want to accomplish. Cowboy Kevin Weatherby says this: cowboys ain't made by boots or hats. They're made by the man inside them that still respects his raisin.
Good stuff.
It is good stuff, right? So, what is that raisin that you want to be able to give those grandkids? And you have the opportunity to do that. I encourage you to do that. Sit down, take some thoughts. This time you've got the ability to do it right, so to speak.
What a fun show.
Yes.
This is a fun show.
My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services. God bless everyone and have a great week.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates, Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services, Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates, Incorporated, and Smart Money Group, LLC.